Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gambles, and welcome back to another full card DFS breakdown. And I know, look at this beautiful, beautiful man and a beautiful, beautiful background. Things have changed. Sort of. Well, maybe it's just me thinking that, and I know that people who have been around the channel for a while know that this is the original setup. We are back home, we are back ready to go, and we are back ready to win some UFC DFS money. And just as Narco Cop said, I mean, we're putting the fades and plays and fades, and it does feel weird, but you know what? It's going to feel good when we're cashing these tickets, and I think we do just that. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. UFC 279, as always, start off with the main event, and you have an interesting one. You have the massive favorite, Chimaev, setting a price tag of 9.6K over his opponent, Nate Diaz, and it's one that leaves you questioning why the UFC even has this fight in place. You have the most dominant fighter in the sport right now in Chimaev, who, I mean, in his own right, aside from his talents inside the cage, on paper scores 118 points per fight. And he's facing a guy, Nate Diaz, who has definitely not looked the best recently. He's lost 3 of his last 4, has been ragdolled a ton in the past, and that's something that I think that Chimaev's gonna be able to do here. It's hard for me to talk about this fight for too long because it feels too simple. You have a guy who's minus 400 to win inside the distance, who is favored to win in round number 1, and it seems almost inevitable that Chimaev is going to smash his way through this. And as much as Nate Diaz has a bad reputation with the UFC right now, he's really getting sent out the door. And it's really unfortunate because everyone loves Nate Diaz, right? So it's going to be sad to see him go, but unfortunately, that's how I see it happening. Early smash for Chimaev. I would not be surprised. Round 1, round 2, 110, 120, 130 points. That is not off the table at all. Of course, there's always an opportunity. It is a fight. Maybe Diaz can drag him into deep waters and finish him later on, but I do think it's a really, really low percentage outcome. Despite that 9.6K price tag, Chimaev is a very, very safe option this week. Now, usually I go right along and I tell you guys my favorite fight to target, and honestly, I think that we're just going to stick to the point right now that we have another fighter who is a huge favorite right below that 9.6K price tag, and we're going to stick and talk about him in Almeida. 9.5K, he's facing, I mean, one of the greatest names, the nicknames in the sport right here against the pleasure man, Turkalj. And Turkalj coming in on short notice, and he's getting another tough matchup. These two fighters up top, 9.5K, 9.6K, have not only ideal matchups, but they could be potentially the most dominant players in the sport right now. Not only for DFS purposes, but they go out there, they dominate. Round 1, round 2, aside from that war with Gilbert Burns that Chimaev had, both these fighters have been round 1, round 2 dominant fighters to the extreme. It just leaves you questioning once again, why are they giving this dominant fighter a Dana White Contender Series prospect? The line is going out of proportion. Almeida is favored to win the spot, and he definitely can, but just as that main event is favored minus 800 to end inside the distance, this one's minus 450 to end inside the distance. Once again, Almeida is favored to win in round 1, and that is something you really have to address when you're playing DraftKings. Albeit their insane, expensive salaries at 9.5, 9.6, they are going to be your keystones. They are going to be your easy plays. Because all credit to their opponents who are taking these fights, they're going to be at a huge disadvantage. Chimaev and Almeida are killers. Almeida averages 116 points, and although there's only 2 fights, he dominated on his Contender Series fight as well. His last fight against Parker Porker, the huge beast of a man, and he's facing a guy in Turkalj who should be able to do the same thing against. Dominant from top position, he should be able to get him out of there first hand. At 9.5K, you have another fighter who you really want to target as well. Looking at it honestly though, this might be the weirdest DFS slate we have ever had for UFC because when do we have 2 fighters that are not only huge favorites, but minus 800 favorites? Fighters who are expected to finish in that first round, fighters that you really want to have in DraftKings because they're DFS gold. You have them on the same slate, and it's really eye-catching. 9.6K, 9.5K. I'm going to be trying my way to work them into both of them. Of course, if you want to be contrarian, you fade those 2 fights, but it's just so hard to look past their upside here. I've seen them both rolling. I wish I could say otherwise. All right, now let's talk about our favorite fight to target on this slate. And although I am targeting those 2 hefty price tags up top, I'm targeting more so from one side. This fight, I want both sides, and let me tell you why. This is the 3rd fight most favorite to end inside the distance. We have minus 300 right now, and that is because their styles are just wild. And once again, DFS gold, that is going to be Cutelaba versus Johnny Walker. Like I mentioned, minus 300 to end inside the distance. If we look at their price tags on DraftKings, we have Cutelaba coming in at a favorite, 8.6K. Return on Johnny Walker, 7.6K. I do think both these guys have their own path to victories, but the main thing to remember here, they're both wild men. 2 madmen who come out all gas, no brakes, usually seem to gas out, and they're really killer to be killed fighters. And I mention this all the time. This is what I want in UFC DraftKings, a fighter who can either go out there, score you 120 points, or be killed in the process, letting their opponent score well as well. And I want ownership on it. That's as simple as it is. I want ownership on it. Let's break it down though. You have Cutelaba, who's going to have more of a wrestle-heavy game plan. Of course, he got submitted in round 1 last time in doing so, but I don't think that Johnny Walker has that same guillotine that Spann does. But on the other hand, Walker on the feet is no joke. He has power. He's shown it before. Ion has been knocked out before, so I think that it's going to be up to Cutelaba to use his game plan. He's not a very trustworthy fighter at that favorite price tag, but he has the opportunity to go out there and land takedowns, get the fight to the ground and pound Johnny Walker, who has a huge hole in his ground game. And I do think that 8.6K, he can definitely outlive that price tag. On the other hand, just as I mentioned, that power for Walker is going to be a factor. If he's able to withstand the early onslaught, get it back to the feet, and let his hands go, something he didn't really do against Santos, he should have the opportunity to knock out Eon's lights. This could be questionably the worst striker that Johnny Walker has faced in a long time. No discredit to Ion Cutelaba, but he has faced killers recently. I just think it's going to be a very volatile affair. I'm on the under 1.5. I think this fight ends early, and the winner of this fight I do think ends up on the optimal lineup. So I am going to be kind of having some ownership with looking towards the dogs. I know we talked about those hefty favorites. You need some dog ownership, but either way, I want ownership on this fight. Give me some violence. Another fight to target for me is going to be that co-main event, Tony Ferguson, the Leech Jiling Liang coming on the other side, and I think it's going to be a really fun matchup. Tony Ferguson, although I love the guy and he's a pioneer of the sport, and I will forever treasure what he's done for the UFC, again, not the best move, I think, in my opinion, moving up a weight class, facing such a power puncher in the Leech when he just got knocked out as brutally as he did recently. I see a few people looking at that subline, whereas I do think that Tony Ferguson can never be counted out and that his best path to victory is choking out the Leech. You're going to be clenched every time they go out there and they strike because the power of the Leech is almost unmatched. It is probably going to be the heaviest hitter Tony Ferguson has faced, and that is going to be coming up a weight class, and I don't necessarily know if he can take it coming off this layoff. And for that reason, Li Jingliang is also going to have some upside at $9,000, and it's a play that you're going to be contrarian in, because if you want to go to him, you're going to have to get away from that 9.6, 9.5K range. But I do think he has upside in his own right. Insane power. I think he's going to have the edge in the feet. That durability of Tony Ferguson doesn't seem to be there too much. And although that this sub path to victory is probably going to be the Tony Ferguson side, I can't see Tony Ferguson shooting for takedowns actively, being able to stay on top against a bigger man. I think this is the Leech's fight to lose, and unfortunately, for my love for Tony Ferguson, I think the Leech knocks him out. Decent contrarian play up top. When we're talking about underdogs this week, I'm drawn towards 6 fighters really in that upper echelon of the dogs this week, in between that 8 and 7.5K range. It's really hard for me to find a win condition for Chris Barnett, despite how much I like him. And we've mentioned how tough it is for Ferguson, Turkalj, and Diaz to win their own fights. That leaves me with one fighter I have not mentioned in that lower range. And this is going to make me almost throw up by talking about this. I do think the line between Dumont and Daniel Wolf is a little bit wide. I said it. I'm going to have some ownership of Daniel Wolf, and let me tell you why. 7K for a fighter who I think will have some success on the feet is hard to look past. Not only do I think she has a higher win probability than Diaz, Turkalj, Barnett, Ferguson, but I think her win condition doesn't score that bad. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. If Dumont grapples, she dominates, and Wolf will probably score 10 points. And that's why it's really hard for me to back as an if fighter in this spot here. But I do think that if this fight gets extended for any period of time, especially on the feet, that Wolf will begin to take over and win the fight. She is the better stand-up fighter. I think she has more power. Dumont's only finished loss has been a knockout loss, and I think that if anyone's going to do it, it is going to be Danielle Wolf. With that being said, I can't go 2 balls to the wall because that grappling upside is there for Dumont. Something is just telling me that Wolf is going to have some success on the feet, and I'm kind of tempted towards her at 7K. With that being said, let's move on to the next underdog. Let's talk about a cash underdog as the next one, actually. We're going to talk about another female fighter. Don't get me wrong, I'm fading this fight as a whole. I think it is kind of a low-scoring fight, but this is why we're talking about cash. Elise Reed, 7.7K. I think she's a fighter who has a high win condition here, and I'm actually picking her to win this fight. So when you're getting a fighter who you think is going to win, think is going to put up decent volume, at 7.7K, she is one of my cash targets of the week. By getting an underdog with her, who I also think wins, I'm able to go up and spend and get those better cash favorites up top. But let's talk about Elise Reed. 7.7K, she's facing the newcomer in Martinez, and although I think Martinez can grow, she's still young, I don't like what I see from her on tape, and I don't like the huge layoff, and I think that this is a fight that's most likely going to stay at range. We've seen Elise Reed taken down, we've seen her dominated, but I don't necessarily see that in Martinez's game plan. As long as this fight stays on the feet, I'm going to have to pick Elise Reed. She outstruck Corey McKenna on the feet, in my opinion. She has a decent striking game. Her big flaw is that ground game is being dominated from top position, which is also kind of hard to hold down. Corey McKenna couldn't do it. I don't think Martinez can do it either. And therefore, if it stays at striking range, I do think that she has the volume, the output, the accuracy to win a decision and score 70 to 80 to 90 points. Is she going to be your GPP winner? No, but she's a cash target. If we're talking about GPP winners, let's move on to the next dog. Johan Lainesse, kind of a cheap shot because he's not actually a dog. But at $8,000, this guy has huge GPP upside. This guy's another killer to be killed fighter. Insane power. He goes out there, throws with fight-ending intention right away. He's gotten knockdowns in the UFC. Knocked down Gabe Green, which is a really hard thing to do. He is really tough. And he's going to get a spot to go out there and exemplify violence once again. Canadian Johan Lainesse is a GPP fighter because he tends to gas out after that first round. His win condition is probably 110, 120 points finish. That can either be through his grappling success, through his insane power on the feet, but in this spot against Weeks, I do think he's going to have to mix in a bit of both. Weeks' biggest asset is his boxing, in my opinion, and although he's never been finished, if anyone's going to test that theory, it's going to be Lainesse. Lainesse has the range, he has the ability to close in there, get the grappling success as well, and I think that his power he throws is going to have an opportunity to put Weeks on his ass. So with that being said, Lainesse, huge upside, huge GPP talent in my opinion, and he's the guy I'm more leaning towards in GPP tournaments, where at least Reed's more of a cash target for me. Sandwich in between though, we have Chad Anheliger, Heili, another really weird spot where I have to bring up the if factor. If Heili wrestles, I think he goes out there and he looks pretty good, but we've seen him be very hittable. We've seen him struggle to shoot for takedowns, and therefore I think another Canadian in Chad Anheliger could go out there and have some success on the feet. Anheliger is insane pressure, great durability, and I think also has some decent power in his own right, and I think that the longer this fight stays standing, the more he's able to walk forward and put damage on Heili. I think that at 7.8K, he has a good chance to win this, and his win condition could also include some knockdowns, some control time, and a lot of output. If Anheliger wants to win this fight, he's going to need to fight perfect and almost maybe to fight from behind like he did last time against Jesse Strader. I think he's live at 7.8K. I think he has finish upside. But again, that comes with a huge if factor if Heili doesn't wrestle. Other side of things, Heili 8.4K if he does wrestle. I think he's a great dart throw, great contrarian option. Not a lot of people are going to go towards him. I think that he could have some good DraftKings success with the takedowns, with the control time, and the overall victory at the end of the day. Again, this is an if fight for me. I wouldn't recommend betting it too often. However, I do think that on DraftKings, both sides are decent targets to be good contrarian. All right, let's wrap up the rest of the card, and we have to do so by mentioning one of my favorite fights in the entire card. We have Daniel Rodriguez going up against Kevin Holland, and this is going to be an insane fight. Let me be honest though. Although I'm looking forward to a very, very technical affair, I don't necessarily think this is the best DraftKings scoring fight, and that is why I haven't talked about it yet. These guys are both very, very durable, and I don't see them going out there and shooting takedowns or getting finishes, and therefore you eliminate the points from takedowns, control time, knockdowns, and you're left to fight based on volume. I think that D-Rod is a very, very live underdog in this fight. He's going to have great boxing combinations. I don't think that Holland's going to necessarily go for too many takedowns here, and therefore he could have some success at 7.5K. Honestly, I think I'm going to have more ownership on him than Holland just because I don't think I can get to Holland that often. What is Holland's win condition? Is he going to knock out Rodriguez? I don't think so. Is he going to proactively shoot takedowns, look to grapple? I don't think so either. How does he reach value at 8.7K? Hard for me to get to him. I think I'm going to pick dog or pass for this in terms of DraftKings perspective, although from an entertaining perspective, this is a fight I really, really want to enjoy. I, however, do think it goes over and therefore it doesn't score the best on DraftKings. Briefly talked about Collier Barnett. I do think Collier has the best path to victory here. Again, contrarian at 9.1K, not someone I'm running to go play. Aldana Chiasson is a huge fade for me. I do think Aldana rolls in the striking, but scores like 60, 70 points in the doing. So I don't think I'm going to get to her that often either. She's a fighter who I think wins decent in cash. No upside for me in GPP. Fade this fight completely. Pickett Tulilin. Let's just call him Dennis. Pickett versus Dennis is another fun fight. Pickett isn't the best DFS player. He's not going to score that well in a win. I think that the more GPP and DraftKings upside lies on the Tulilin side because Dennis has the opportunity to go out there, throw with fight-ending intentions, get inside that range, and his win condition scores a lot better than Pickett's. DraftKings-wise, give me the dog. Last but not least, Erosa Dawodu. I think this is a really, really fun fight. Kind of going under the radar this weekend just because Erosa's going to fight at a really high clip, and I do think Dawodu is the better fighter and going to have the opportunity to have success here. And at 8.9K, another contrarian option, but his ceiling is nowhere near those 9.5K, 9.6 guys. Don't think his ceiling's anywhere near Jingliang's at 9K either, so it's hard for me to get to him as well. With that being said, contrarian, I do think he is the better striker than Arosa, is going to be able to find the chin, and I do think he knocks him out. Hard for me to get to Arosa too, but I think that his killer to be killed mentality may allow him to score decent points. However, the pick is going to be Duodu, another fight I'm kind of struggling to get to as well. That's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Like I said, once again, one of the weirdest DraftKings slates we have ever had. These two favorites up top make it for a really, really weird slate. 118 average, 116 average, two very dominant fighters, and for that reason, kind of throwing me off my game. Hopefully what I gave you is enough insight to be contrarian, make other lineups, and hopefully my picks were portrayed across through the screen. If they weren't portrayed enough and you want to talk to me about more, DMs are always open on Twitter at GamblesGordo. Feel free to chat there. That being said, tons of content coming on the channel. We're back in the old plays. We're ready to go. I'm ready to make content for you guys, and that is not only UFC side of things. NFL is back this week. I'm starting a brand new segment with my friend Ryan Larkin to break down some NASCAR DFS as well. And as always, Dana White Contender Series, full card betting breakdowns, prop drops, and the current MMA best bets video. Tons of content, lots of opportunity for you guys to make some money. So this is the best time ever to like and subscribe to the channel. Please show me some love. I put in a lot of work for you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. But with that being said, guys, enjoy the card this weekend, and let's make some money, guys.